Probably we should get started. Too bad it has been raining since the morning. It's very hard. So hopefully people are so slowly coming. Okay, so good morning everyone for coming to this public forum. But before we start the discussions, let Dr. Pagon Sirivakal, the Dean of the Faculty of Political Science, Chulalongkorn University, to give you a welcome remarks. Please, Dr. Pagon.
Okay, good morning everyone. It's a rainy day. Welcome to the faculties. Here's my welcome remarks. And I'm glad to see many of you, even though it's a rainy day, and also many familiar faces. Thank you so much. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished speakers and esteemed guests, it is my great pleasure to welcome all of you to today's seminar, where we will explore topics that is not only timely, but critical to understanding the shifting dynamics of Thailand's position in global governance. As many of you are aware, multilateral cooperation has faced significant hurdles in recent years due to the large number of members, hence multiple and complex interests. We can easily see this in various negotiations at the WTO and UN frameworks. Therefore, the world has witnessed a shift for decades toward more flexible forms of organization, international collaborations. Initiatives like the RCEP, CPTPP, BRICS are emblematic of this transformation. While such arrangements may offer faster and more targeted solutions, they also carry profound geopolitical implications in the context of great power competition. Thailand finds themselves at the heart of these discussions as a nation that has long embraced a diversified approach to international cooperation. Thailand's active participation in initiatives for decades, such as in various ASEAN-led FTAs, with external counterparts, GMS, BIMSTEC, RCEP, the Thailand EU PCA, etc. Thailand's recent aspiration to join both BRICS and the OECD sparks a public debate whether Thailand's strategic engagement in this sub-multilateral arrangements enhance its economic resilience. More importantly, how will these decisions position Thailand as we navigate the growing geopolitical tensions between the US and China? Today's seminar brings together a distinguished group of experts to address these pressing questions. We will examine whether the economic benefit of Thailand's involvement in plurilateralism outweigh the risk, and if this approach will serve as an effective hedging strategy amid ongoing power competition. Today, I would like to extend a special welcome to the group of Indonesian government officials from Foreign Cooperation Division KLN, Ministry of Law and Human Rights, to this forum at Chulalongkorn University. In the spirit of ASEAN, I encourage you all to actively participate in our discussions and share your insights and experiences from Indonesian perspective during a Q&A session. Also want to express my heartfelt appreciation to the Frederick Norman Stiftung, FNS. FNS has been a consistent and invaluable partner to ISIS Thailand. In organizing forum right today, aims at engaging the Thai public and crucial issues affecting both the country and the region. I look forward to continuing and strengthening this collaboration in the future. Thank you all for your presence here today. I look forward for productive and enlightening seminar. Welcome once again to the faculty. ขอบคุณครับ
Thank you very much, Dr. Pagon, for your remarks and addressing the entering point where we can start our discussion today. But before starting the discussion, let me introduce our panelists today. We have four. First, Dr. Somchai Phakaphatviwatt. He is an economist with an interesting background, jumping from studying liberal arts in his undergrad to political science and political economy. in his postgraduate studies, as you see in his bio. He was associate professor teaching at Thammasat University, and his last position at Thammasat University was the vice rector for development planning. And he also held positions of advisor to the UN SCAP and various bodies, both in public and private sectors. Second, not new to you, Dr. Thitinan Pongsutirak, our ISIS fellow. Our ISIS followers should be familiar with him, as he always, expresses his opinion. And he also my predecessor as a director of ISIS Thailand. Now he's also with us as a senior fellows at the institute. He's professor in international relations at the faculty and one of Thailand's prominent scholars when it comes to Thai politics, foreign policy, and geopolitics in this region. So many of us have read his commentaries, opinion piece, interview quite often, especially in Bangkok Post and some of the, podcast channels, and probably you know him well. Third, Dr. Nathanan Kunama. Dr. Nathanan is associate professor, a colleague of mine at the Department of International Relations. Her specialization is in European studies and the EU. Dr. Nathanan is also director of the European Studies here at Chulalongkorn University, and he's one of the few scholars in Southeast Asia who's granted Jean Monnet Chair, which reflects her dedications on deepening knowledge about EU study in higher education institutions in the countries. So fourth, we have the youngest one, and perhaps Dr. Narut Jalansi. Dr. Narut, assistant professor and vice dean of the Faculty of Political Science and Public Administrations from Chiang Mai University. He flew from Chiang Mai last night. He teaches international relations there, and especially specializes in comparative regionalism and the Mekong sub-region. So as you can see, we have a wide range of expertise in, ranging from economics, international political economy, international relations. So I'm sure they will sort of elucidate, the questions we are trying to tackle today. As the title of the seminar suggests, we have entered for a while into the world of, quite a difficult word to pronounce, right? Plurilateralisms and minilateralisms, and what you might call it. They are the deviations from the international corporations away from the Bretton Woods institutions, as you may see in the UN system, such as IMF, World Bank, WTO negotiations. So these multilateral institutions are the cornerstone of global governance since the end of the Cold War, end of the post-war World War II international order. So perhaps in the first round, I would like to bring you to the big debate, right? The classic debate a little bit. For some of you might not have familiar with this issue about multilateralism versus sub-multilateralism. Actually, this is an old debate. Actually, it reminds me when I was in undergrad and postgraduate in the early and late 1990s. Back then, we have been discussing about this issue for quite some time. We saw a lot of flourishing, or emerging regionalism, deepening of the integrations of the European Union during the 90s. You see, like ASEAN started to build a trading bloc. Like you see FTA emerge in ASEAN. You see APEC, right? Asia Pacific Economic Cooperations. You see a lot of like these kind of sub-multilateral institutions emerging since the 1990s. And then for recent decades, in 2000 we saw a lot of FTAs, right, emerging. So we have this kind of like word probably some of you might have familiar with, spaghetti bowl effect, right? It's like we have like a bunch of FTA, bilateral FTA, minilateral FTA between countries. So and recent decade we also have like academics used to offer like a new term to call these kind of phenomena, right? Like we see minilateralism emerging in the recent decades. Sometimes it's not about trade anymore. It has broadened the goals encompassing both political and security. You see Quad, emerging in recent years. You see AUKUS, between three countries, UK, Australia, and the United States, or even BRICS, actually has been quite a while, right? But it has been in the top news, recently. So, but the debate has continued on the core issue of the pro and cons, right, of the plurilateralism and minilateralism. Are they a building block or stumbling block to achieving multilateralism at the global scales? Any pro and con for for many countries turning into this kind of strategy, suboptimal arrangement, that we want to achieve at the global scales. So probably no one is suitable than Dr. Somchai to address these big questions. Actually, to be honest, I have been a fan of him since I was in undergrad. He was writing so much about European integration back then, like in the early 90s, late 80s. Globalization was like, a very buzzword, and everyone just like jumped into this bandwagoning, discussing about this debate. So we won't spend too much time on these, first big debates. Probably just give the background, what's pro and con, what multilateralism, what plurilateralism, minilateralism, and what's a pro and con between two of them in terms of like general and broad idea. Please, Dr. Somchai, you can start.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I feel honored to be here, speaking to an audience with a lot of experience in a concept, in a discussion with a very complex content that is multilateralism, plurilateralism, and minilateralism. The first thing we have to discuss what is the extent of defining how many countries make up of a group to be what we call multilateral, and what will be the plurilateral. Multi and pluri in terms of language is more or less the same. Okay. The only difference may be when we talk about multi, that is quite different. But when we talk about pluri, there are some shared value against them. But it's really difficult to define which one is pluri. But of course, some of the association or organization, we say that multi, United Nations, nearly 200 countries, 193. What about EU 27? That is multi or a pluri. Of course, it must be pluri because they have a shared value. So, and what about minilateralism? How many countries? How can we distinguish between plurilateral and minilateral? Okay. From this conceptual framework, I would say that when we talk about big, okay, that is multilateral. Small, between small and big, we go plurilateral, and a small one. But in reality, it's very difficult. So one thing we can say that what is big, it could be very difficult to hold together. And of course, in the concept of what we call the conflict of the geopolitics now, what is big is very difficult to hold together. What about the role of United Nations? What about the role of WTO? Because WTO, the last one that WTO achieved, that is Uruguay round, that become the World Trade Organization. What about the last one? Failed. Until now, we don't have another round with the failure of the last one. Okay? So that's one thing, how to hold this multilateral altogether in the context of dividing line between two opposite ideological groups. That's one thing. But the second one, when we say that it is big, it is very difficult to hold together, and it's smaller, we can hold. That is not true. Look about the 27 countries of the EU. You have achieved what we call the economic union. You have already achieved the single market in 1992. Now you are achieving a certain what we call economic union with Euro, and also you have already harmonize a certain defense and foreign policy. But look about ASEAN. ASEAN, when we talk about EEC, you have achieved with 27 countries a lot of what we call the single market. But ASEAN 215, we achieve very little. Yes, we have AFTA, but what about service? What about capital? And what about the labor? We achieve very little. So they say that big is difficult to hold is also an exception. How EU could hold together despite the bigger one? Because they have a shared value related to the history, but ASEAN, we don't have that kind of shared value. So the ASEAN community has been stuck into what we call a low, what we call integrated content. Okay, this is one thing. Secondly, sometimes we have a bigger one, a very big one, in order to fill the gap. Look at one thing, we have a smaller one. We have a ASEAN, we have Asia, Eurasia, we have Gulf Cooperation, we have SAR, then come what we call Asia Cooperation Dialogue. That is what we call the feeling of group. That feeling with different minilateralism, there is some hole that has been left to create something. But of course, the role of this kind of the what we call the multilateral will be very in general, in the abstract one. That is the second. The third thing that I would mention is that is plurilateral, supplementary, or complementary. Minilateralism is supplementary or complementary. Look at one thing. When we talk about ASEAN, okay, it could be pluri. But of course, we have what macro sub-regional cooperation. We have triangle, IMTGT. I would say that this complementary because you have what we call the ASEAN community with ASEAN EEC, and you need what they call a smaller one into hold together in a certain functional one. So we have what we call the minilateralism, macro sub-regional cooperation, ACMES, something like that, and you have IMTGT. Okay, this is one thing. So complementary. But if you look at the other thing, you have on one hand bilateral free trade area between Thailand, China, and China. Then we have ASEAN plus one. So it means that when you go smaller, dynamism means we have to go bigger. So the bigger one, that would be the ASEAN plus one. But there is still gap. We have ASEAN plus 6. We need all the 6 and the ASEAN all together. That become RCEP. But RCEP without India, because India has been working with the RCEP, but withdraw at the final. So this one is a dynamism, what we call bottom up, from a smaller one into a bigger one. ASEAN plus 6, it means ASEAN free trade with each country. But we need the holistic picture, so we come what we call the RCEP. This is another. The other example that is very important, I would say this supplementary. In fact, it is what we call the addition. We have 21 countries of the APEC, with 5 countries, the other part of the Pacific, and the other 16 countries. From 1989 until now, what the APEC achieved. APEC could achieve the free trade area, not until now, no. Even, for example, the ASEC vision 220 is just said freer. So what the smaller country and the public country need, they need some other addition to replace what they could not achieve in the APEC. That is the 2002. Singapore, Chile, and New Zealand talking during in the sideline of the Los Cabos APEC in Mexico. Why don't we achieve with ourselves within what we call like-minded country, and that become the TPP and become TTP official in 209 with the last one, the four founding fathers, that is the Brunei. So with Obama, enter another 8 country, make up of the TPP 12 country. But finally, Trump withdraw. Now it's become CPTPP. What I'm talking about is that how it is conceived that the TPP, it is in the absence of the achievement of what we call the APEC. So we need some replacement with a smaller country that have the like-minded to achieve. So that is the other thing. When we talk near to Thailand, when we talk about plurilateralism, and let's say about what we are talking, BRICS. Secondly, PCA, Comprehensive Partnership and Cooperation. Okay. Third one, OECD. And the third one, Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity. If you look at this for one, because Thailand now is part of this one, look at one thing, BRICS. BRICS, plurilateral, okay? Plurilateral. It's become from the 4 founding countries, 5 countries with BRICS, with the plural S, Africa, okay? South Africa. Now it's 9. This coming October, there are a number of what we call applicants. One of them is Thailand and Malaysia. Okay. So how this one work? It began with very unsubstantial content because BRIC has been created with Gene O'Neill, 203 from Goldman Sachs in stock market, right? We have a potential to invest in these 4 countries. So in the sideline, it's remember that is 208 or 9 in the assembly, General Assembly. These 4 countries hold together. Why don't we create BRICS? And until before what we call the conflict, BRIC achieved very little. One thing that BRIC achieved, Big Bang, okay? Secondly, international reserve currency arrangement or something like that, very little. But now, all these 4 countries want to go what is stronger. They need what we call more countries in order to create what is some counterweight to G7. Okay, so that is the group what we call the maybe the forum for the global South, with China and Russia wanted to create this one in order to make a counterweight to what we call the other part. So this what happened here, okay? When we talk about the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, America has been, for example, absent in this area. Obama tried to enter into this absent by joining what we call the TPP. Unfortunately, Trump withdrew. So what about the contents of what we call cooperation and integration between America and this part of the world? This laggard. Look at China. China has what we call an organic relation with a lot of countries, begin FTA, ASEAN plus 1 plus 6, sub-regional. But what about America? So they did what we call filling, what we call the gap. So they create what we call the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. Unfortunately, they have a 4 pillar. Trade has to be suspended. Okay. Secondly, supply chain. Third one, the fair economy, and the fourth one, clean economy. But really, some people say that it's hollow because they could not touch what we call the free trade. So in this one, they try to create something in order to fill the gap in the absence of political counterweight. That is the Indo-Pacific. Another one that is the PCA. PCA comprehensive partnership and cooperation agreement. In fact, in 1980, Thailand, as part of the ASEAN, has already been linked to at that time, the European community to what we call cooperation agreement. But then EU want to add some what we call foreign affairs content into that, creating what we call the partnership. In the partnership, we have what we call a lot of what we call content. Some of the content related to human rights, related to foreign affairs. This is what we call the idea, the ideology. So they want to impose a certain what we call political condition in this one. And the PCA is like something like that best. When we talk about the negotiation between Thailand and EU about the free trade area, so the free trade must be within what we call the bigger content of PCA. So in this sense, it's more than what we call free trade area, because if you look, you need what we call the ideological human rights, something like that. Even the EU, you yourself have the problem with one, Hungary, Poland, something like that. So it is mean that this one, this is what we call this one maybe supplementary of what we call, or complementary of what we call the EU and the ASEAN. This is the PCA. And the last one, OECD. OECD is what we call the successor of OEEC. OEEC is conceived in 1948 with the Marshall Plan. And with the disbursement of the Marshall Plan, they have to create what we call OECD in 1961. At first, OECD is the group of the big country. With the end of the Cold War, then the OECD have to help what we call the Eastern Europe, WISCAT country, 4 countries. So it's a transition from what we call a rich country become the more country join. Later on, Mexico something. Now OECD changed because they changed not is the group of the rich country, where Thailand already applied for that. So they changed in the nature in what? Functional. They did what we call a certain cooperation in a sense. That is why OECD now work something like what we call a functional, working for the CG, good corporate governance. Thailand, good corporate governance has been influenced by OECD. And the last one, corporate minimum tax 15% has been worked within what we call the context of OECD. So my final idea, or the final part of what I'm discussing is that when we talk the 3 different concepts, okay, in general we say that each concept is conceived maybe because the bigger get bogged down, we need what we call smaller. But that is not always true, okay? Because bigger sometimes is successful more than the smaller one, like ASEAN compared with EU. But in general, it's yes. Secondly, there need what we call a certain part, the cooperation need what we call the bottom up, from small part get to the bigger one. Like I just mentioned about FTA to bilateral into ASEAN Plus one. And the third one, filling the gap. Filling the gap means what? Filling the gap means what? In the absence geographically, we need some what we call organization. That's why after the Cold War, we have Mercosur in the Atlantic. We have what we call Comunidad Andina, Andean community in what we call the Andean. And then we have what we call African Central. So this is what we call it, filling the gap. And also filling the gap in what? We have SAR and we have what we call ASEAN. We need what we call BIMSTEC join on together. That is what we call the filling the gap. And last one, filling the gap ideologically in the context of what we call the Cold War, not Cold War, the context of the rivalry between the two groups. We need some, for them, counterweight against this one. That is what we call the expansion of the BRICS. So ladies and gentlemen, I see what we call the multilateral, trilateral, and also the minilateral in the context of the criteria I just mentioned. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Somchai. So we can see like differences between these three, big words: multilateral, plurilateral. Actually, there was this typo here, and minilateralism, minilateral arrangement. So they both play supplementary role, a complementary role, and basically they help fill the gaps, in which some areas and some regions cannot get from the multilateral arrangements, and you start to see the elements of geopolitics. Normally, plurilateralism, minilateralism is created, by the big rising powers and trying to counterweight with the rival power of the existing international order. So let me bring us to the second speaker, Dr. Thitinan. So probably you would suggest some of the geopolitical context in this discussion. Thank you. 10 minutes.
Thank you, Ajahn Pongpisut. Sawasdee krab. Good morning, everyone. I think the three vocabularies, three terms, three concepts that Ajahn Pongpisut has mentioned: multilateralism, plurilateralism, and minilateralism. I'll just add one more. It's becoming more popular among us international relations people. That is multi-alignment, which I'll come back to in Thailand's case in the second round. So I'll just be provocative by saying that the multilateral system, multilateralism, is breaking down before our eyes. And as Ajahn Pongpisut noted, it's not a recent phenomenon. It's been ongoing for some time. We can see that the rules-based liberal international order is unraveling. And the unravel goes back to maybe the 1990s. We can trace, I think one evidence of it is the breakdown of the WTO, the World Trade Organization, the lack of progress, the failure of the Doha round, and now pretty much the World Trade Organization is not working, WTO. The title of this seminar is telling. And if you look at it closely, you might think it's a typo. Thailand's choice, plurilateralism, multilateralism, but building block or stumbling block. Block with the K and block without the K. Now, block with the K is a good block. Block with the K can be a good block. The WTO has Article 24, which says that you can form bilateral FTAs, regional arrangements, as long as they are building blocks to multilateralism. But these building blocks have become an end goal in themselves, which means that we end up now with the block without the K. So what should be building blocks have become distinctive blocks, competing blocks without the K. And that tells us a lot about where the international system is going. There's an ongoing, I would say, even accelerating breakdown of global order, of rules-based liberal international order. WTO is one clear case. No progress on multilateral negotiations, but another case would be the United Nations itself. The UN is a big, giant bureaucracy. It does many good things, and if it doesn't exist, we would have to invent it. But now that it exists, we can see that it's not working the way it should do, the way that it's intended. And the blatant frontal assault on the United Nations system, of course, is the Russian invasion of Ukraine, that we see that the UN cannot do much about except to pass resolutions. And the resolutions, you can keep passing resolutions, but on the ground there's a war that Russia is waging that is not stopping. Many people are dying and so on. So if you look around, multilateralism, I think, is really breaking down. In its place, you have a proliferation of plurilateral blocks, If you look at the RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, IPEF, Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, CPTPP, from the TPP become the CPTPP, Comprehensive Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership, BRICS, OECD, these are competing blocs. OECD does not have the United States. CPTPP does not have China. There's no trading bloc that has both US and China. So you can see the US-China conflict working its way into blocism without decay. And for us in this region, this is consequential. BRICS now stand in contrast to the OECD. If you join the BRICS, maybe like Thailand or Indonesia can still try to join the OECD, and Indonesia will try to do both. Thailand wants to do both, but I think that the OECD criteria and OECD membership is the gold standard, which means that it requires far-reaching structural reforms of the economy, of governance, and so on, which is really what Thailand needs, and it's Thailand's future if it can join the OECD. But it would take at least 4 or 5 years, and there would have to be a lot of domestic reforms, domestic bargaining, compromise. I don't see the homework being done to convince big business, conglomerates, the tycoons, the oligarchs to liberalize, to open up. And then, of course, Thailand has issues with human rights, fundamental rights, freedoms, and then, of course, democratic values, democratic practices, dissolutions of winning parties, and this is going to be stumbling blocks to OECD membership. But if you can join OECD, I think that's where Thailand needs to go. Now, in its place, and we'll come to Thailand in the second round, but if you join BRICS, you can be a member tomorrow, next year. I think there's a temporary moratorium on BRICS, but already we have 5 new members: Egypt, Ethiopia, UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. So when I come to the Thailand part, I've written, and I think that's not a good move for Thailand to join BRICS, but we'll come to that in the second round. So just to say that, the global system, the multilateral trade order is breaking down. Even the UN is facing challenges not had before, the UN system not working. Russian invasion is a case study, a frontal assault on the UN system. The plurilateral blocks that we see are competing, RCEP, CPTPP, for example, and RCEP, no US, CPTPP, no China, and also no US. So US has now IPEF. IPEF, definitely no China. IPEF is actually anti-China. It's intended to secure supply chains outside of China. So you can see how they compete. Now, what does this mean for us in this region? The proliferation of minilateral arrangements. Ajahn Pongpisut mentioned the Quad. This would be the US, Australia, Japan, India. There's also new Quad, Japan, US, Australia, and the Philippines. And there are more even tripartite. So these minilaterals pivot around the like-mindeds, which means that a lot of this has to do with the US-China conflict, not just confrontation, but conflict. China also has its own bloc. The Belt and Road is one, but also the SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which has both China and Russia. Russia has its own bloc, the Eurasian Economic Union. So, the big powers have their own blocks, competing blocks, but overlapping blocks, but mainly these blocks, without decay, are determined by the US-China conflict, by the geopolitical tussle between the two. Now, for our region, this is consequential because blockism without decay eclipse, they overshadow ASEAN. ASEAN has had a good run from the 1960s, 70s, 80s, building up into APEC, and Ajahn Pompisut already mentioned, the highlights, the milestones of ASEAN would be APEC in 1989, ASEAN Regional Forum in 1994, ASEAN Plus 3, which led to the Chiang Mai initiative, multilateralized swap agreements, that was in 1998, and then the pinnacle of ASEAN centrality was the East Asia Summit in 2005, the mid-2000s, in the middle of the global war on terror. So that was really a good run. And then since, after East Asia Summit, I would say maybe the ADMM, which became the ASEAN's Defense Ministers Meetings Plus, 2010, early 2010s, was really the end of the good run. And then ASEAN faced challenges, faced divisions, splits within, starting in 2012, when Cambodia chaired and ASEAN was not able to come up with a joint statement, and very much driven by the US-China conflict again. And China has divided ASEAN, but the US has not helped to bring together ASEAN because the US has China in its sight. China has determined that the US is intent on keeping it down. So you look at the ASEAN centrality now has been eroded. You come to various issues, apart from all the minilaterals that are dividing ASEAN. Some ASEAN members will join BRICS, some will not join. Mainly, I think, will be Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia. Philippines will not join BRICS. And if it tries, China will have something to say about that. I think Singapore probably will be vetoed by BRICS, by Russia, if it tries to join. If you come to Myanmar, ASEAN is divided on Myanmar. Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore on one side, maybe Thailand a bit. And then on the other side is the rest. Russia, Ukraine, Vietnam, and Laos have consistently abstained from the UN resolutions to condemn the Russian aggression. Hamas, Israel, this is an issue that I think our international friends and community should be cognizant of. The Israel-Hamas issue on the one side, and on the flip side, the Israel-Palestine issue is consequential in Southeast Asia. Indonesia and Malaysia are, diametrically opposed to what is happening in the Middle East, in Gaza. They feel very strongly. And in Thailand, I think we don't feel as much, but certainly I think the Thai government could and should be doing a little bit more to say something about the Hamas that killed, 38 Thai workers. We had the largest number of Thai workers in Israel. That's different than our views about what Israel is doing in its neighborhood. But views are very different in Southeast Asia about Israel. And in Indonesia, Malaysia don't have formal relations with Israel, and they feel very strongly about what Israel is doing in Gaza. So you look at the various issues, South China Sea divided, so for ASEAN, it's being pulled apart by the minilaterals, by the plurilaterals. And as a result, they become more multi-aligned. And even the multi-alignments also have been divisive for ASEAN. So the world, the global system, is moving from rules-based, I think, to self-help, which there's a nice Thai word, Thai phrase for the self-help, to khai to man, which means that in a world where to khai to man, every man for himself, every person for herself, himself, every country, every state for itself, rather than rules-based, this means you have to reach out, you have to multi-align, you have to form alliances, you have to join competing blocks, different blocks, and navigate your way, navigate a state, any country, its way in a world where I think you will see more confrontation and maybe even conflict moving forward. So I'll leave it at that for now, Ajahn. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ajahn Titinan. So he trying to give us pictures of breakdowns of the multilateral arrangements and mechanisms that could tackle a lot of issues in current stage. And then there's emerging bloc without K. Firstly, in economic area, and now like within the geopolitical context, we see a lot of like geopolitical bloc, right? Like the emerging and rising powers versus the existing powers in global politics. And we as a region, ASEAN, get affected. ASEAN centrality has been weakened, cannot tackle a lot of problems, and then everyone just seek for its own way to tackle its own problem at hand, right? So that's the conclusions of Ajahn Titinan. So let's see, Ajahn Natanan, how you're going to see these debates and trends. Thank you.
Thank you, our chair, Ajahn Phongpisut, and good morning, distinguished guests. I think this is my 5th or 6th time with ISIS, but this time is the most pressure because apart from Ajahn Titinan, I have Ajahn Somchai, in which he used to be my former professor teaching me international political economy and European studies when I was in college. So it's quite a bit nervous, and we have like a star, like Ajahn Narut as well. So, well, I would like to address the question posed by Ajahn Phongpisut again, that sub-multilateralism arrangements complementary to the slow process of multilateralism at the global scale. Because as serving director for European Studies Center in Jula, and also the EU follower, I would like to reflect this question by using the EU trade initiatives in this multilateralism process. Okay, as Ajahn Titinan and Ajahn Somchai already mentioned about the trade environments, you see that starting from the global scale, we see that the WTO has been frozen since the Doha round. Yeah, some use the word failed, some use the word, I prefer to use the word, it's been frozen, right? It's been halted from the Doha round, and even the EU is important, has been important players in WTO as one of the big 5 together with the US, Canada, Australia, and Japan. But as this Doha development round supposed to agree as a single undertaking, so it's not going anywhere, right? And as we know that the WTO was shifting from GATT, from the trade-only negotiations that preferred by the Global South to the trade-related negotiations with normative aspects. So this global trade liberalization is not convenient for the EU to pursue that policy, that trade initiatives. And then the other level, the EU have to shift to the region, or this bi-regionalism. And this is also not quite successful. The EU and the Andean were successful only partly. The EU and Mercosur is dragging on. EU-ASEAN start negotiation in 2009, it's failed, right? So the cooperation with ASEAN was left over. EU-ASEAN strategic partnership body is very broad, not trade initiatives. And it should be noted that, I will elaborate later in the second part, that the EU mirrored the US in approaching or selecting countries for this FTA or PCA approach. And well, what the EU could do is to engage like a non-trade initiatives under the interregionalism approach, starting from Asia-Europe meeting or the RCEP, starting in 1996. And this RCEP indeed helped multilateralism initiatives in East Asia because it's led to ASEAN +3, East Asia Economic Caucus or EAEC. So actually EU played important parts in these regional projects, especially in ASEAN frameworks. And how this interregionalism served the EU goals, there were 2 goals. The first goal is the materialistic goal. What is materialistic goal? It is to make the EU economic presence in the region. So starting from EU start to have EU strategy in Asia in 94, Global Europe competing in the world in 2006, and this materialistic goal, helped the EU to de-risk on over-reliance on energy, on supply chains from China, from Russia, and also to de-risk the EU from US trade war and protectionism since President Donald Trump, and also they're facing COVID-19 pandemics and Russia and Ukraine war that Titan just mentioned. So if we are seated in 2021 and 2023, there were 5 important EU documents. I need to read it out. It's quite interesting. The first one is strategic dependencies and capacities. It's the first agreement. The second one is European economic security strategy, economic security, and then European Chips Act, European Critical Raw Materials Act, and European Council's conclusions on China. So it shows clearly that the EU strategy of de-risking is quite clear in this couple of years ago. And this is the first materialistic goal that the EU need to approach the non-Europe regions. And the second goal is to achieve ideological goals. We heard a lot the word normative power Europe. The EU has important value of its integration model, human rights, democracy, rule of law. And as Jan Somchai just mentioned, it is attached to the PCA and FTA. These political norms was attached in this economic agreement through the use of fair trade, intellectual property rights, labor rights, ILO regulations in the Thai-EU FTA as well. Or the environmental, like the carbon border adjustment mechanisms. So this NPE on normative power, Europe still facing a challenge because, as I did mention that the global south want the trade only agreements. They didn't want trade-related agreements, right? So it's the same debates that make the WTO frozen in the Doha round. So this is another challenge that how the EU can sustain the normative power Europe, or are they going to shifting to be the economic realist, going to be the market power Europe, which is another debate. So, as a professor said that it's 8 minutes, right? Okay, I will continue in the second round on the Thailand's policy on the PCA, FTA, and also some touches upon the BRICS. Thank you.
Thank you, Natanan. So she was trying to give us the case of Europe, how the plurilateral arrangement within the European Union itself helped fill in some gaps that probably addressing the failure at the multilateral arrangement at the WTO Doha rounds, and then EU sort of like fill in some of the normative goals into the EU and with the relations with its counterparts, region to regions, and well, we see like the failure of the region to regions, under the EU with ASEAN, and then the EU has changed to sort of like EU and sort of like, I'm not sure it's called bilateral, but then the EU as a group, and then single countries, in ASEAN, and probably Thailand is gonna achieve that very soon. So let me bring us to probably Ajahn Narut could mention about. As he specialized in Mekong sub-region, probably he has some other experience and ideas about the minilateral and plurilateral arrangement within this sub-region. Thank you.
Thank you, the organizer. I'm Narut from Chiang Mai University. I'm really honored to be here and joining these panels because everyone here on the panel, they are my professors here in Bangkok. When Pong Pisut contacted me on Friday evening, that he wanted me to join and share my thoughts on the situation and the ideas of how minilateralism and multilateralism could affect regional or sub-regional initiatives in Southeast Asia. I tried to think like what kind of topics or my thought can be shared. I moved from Bangkok to Chiang Mai 15 years ago, and my research is on the Mekong sub-region, particularly on economic regional initiatives, regional cooperation. And I work with some government agencies on security issues, and then there's a gap in my theoretical understanding of what's going on in the Mekong sub-region. One hand, you have regional economic initiatives, and on the other hand, you have practitioners who are thinking about security, dynamic, transforming issues on security perspective. How could we combine economic and security perspective to understand the dynamic in the Mekong sub-region? So once Ajahn Pong Pisut invited me to talk or share my thought on this situation, I thought that, okay, maybe I would try to bridge the gap here and try to share my thought on how multilateralism, minilateralism, or sub-regionalism could bring and shape Thailand's foreign policy. So this is what I'm going to talk about in the next few minutes. So the topic, actually, I tried to understand when Ajahn Pong Pisut gave me the topic of this panel, and I was like, oh my God, I don't know how to respond to this very specific terms or jargon that we are trying to understand. So I changed a little bit to make it more understandable for me. So I changed it into something Thailand in the changing world order. And the main questions that I'm trying to answer is, how will Thailand's engagement with minilateralism shape its relations with the Mekong sub-region? Just to bring some theoretical understanding and to look from a very broad perspective to respond to the dynamic at the sub-region. So I would like to go back to the context first. We are talking about multilateralism, minilateralism, bilateralism, and when you look into the context, I would say that generally, we would say that this world is now run by a liberal democratic order. That is a very basic assumption of what's going on in the world nowadays. And this kind of basic assumption shape how each country and international organization interacts in the international system. With that liberal democratic order, it shapes many things, many structure, many political and economic arrangement, configuration. Those are the things that is happening now. But what we are seeing now is that I think most of us would agree that the polar or the international structure is now changing. It's now changing from bilateral, a bipolar system into multipolar system. So with that multipolar world, what does it mean to many international scholars? It means that we have more polar, and there are increasing role in global South country. We have seen the increasing role of many developing and underdeveloped countries in the international system. So we are changing into the multipolar world. So with that one, another issue that comes, and it actually is something that is embedded unconsciously, is that there is some kind of narrative or perspective embedded in the leaders' explanations of how the world is developing to. So we are thinking that the world is now competing. So this kind of concept where people see that the world is competing, so it means that there are more rivalry scenarios happening in the future. The third thing is that we are having new challenges, transboundary challenges. I'm not going to mention about that. Everyone knows that we have human trafficking, drug trafficking, environmental issues. These new transborder challenges they are now shaping how the international relations developing too. So these are the situation, the context of what's going on now. And so with that, many people would say that then we should think like how the world is now developing to. Is the international system, do we have another alternative explanation of what's going on now? Instead of seeing that liberal democratic order is shaping the world, maybe there's some alternative order happening, and Thailand can use or make use of those alternative international order. So I would say that there are two arguments to come back to this forum. First, I would say that Thailand engagement in economic minilateralism and hybrid framework and political and security minilateralism is not merely about side-taking with a focus on national interest. Rather, it represents the articulation of a strategic positioning encompassing both interests and values within the international system. The second thing is that, therefore, the relevant question should be examined the significance of this current international order, particularly its characteristics and limitations, and how this shapes Thailand's vision and national interests. So these are my two main arguments I'm going to talk about now. Now, I would like to propose the ideas of how I see the world nowadays and how it affects minilateralism, bilateralism, multilateralism, and Thailand choices in this context. I will go from the left to the right. So the context that I mentioned earlier, that we have liberal democratic order, and the other side or another narrative that is going on is alternative world order. This world order is shaping and asking the world to choose side. The situation for small and medium states in the world is that we have no choice. So we have to meet in this dilemma of choosing side. Are we going to go with the liberal democratic order or alternative world order? So with that kind of situation, it brought and it developed many mechanisms, institutions in world politics. So with that liberal democratic order, we developed unilateralism, multilateralism, bilateralism, minilateral, regional, sub-regionalism. So these are the mechanisms and institutions that have developed due to the liberal democratic order. With that, the existing institutions or mechanisms developed under the liberal democratic order, how could the alternative world orders proposed by China, Russia, and India compromise, because they have to coexist together? The very basic question is that if we are going to have another alternative world order proposed by China, Russia, India, how could this order coexist with the existing liberal democratic orders? So with that dilemma that we have this changing international order, it affects Thailand choices very much. For Thailand, I think there are four scenarios, four mechanisms that Thailand is facing now. The first one is we have sub-regionalism that we have to tackle. We have regionalism on ASEAN. We have minilateralism and multilateralism. So these things is now shaping Thailand, because Thailand have to think like how to deal with these levels differently, because these mechanisms and this platform was shaped by the international order, liberal democratic order. So the questions with those mechanisms is that how could each sub-regionalism, regionalism, minilateralism has different concentration, economic and embedded economic and political value. So what should Thailand do with this situation? So when we look into the existing mechanisms in the Mekong sub-region, any platforms and many regional initiatives is quite small. That I cannot enlarge it further than this. We have from the left side to the right, we have Lanchang Mekong Corporation, we have Mekong US Partnership, we have Mekong Japan Corporation, Mekong Ganga Corporation, Mekong ROK Corporation, and GMS and ACMEX and CLV. So these existing mechanisms that we do have now has different concentration and area of cooperation. So as you can see from the diagrams that each mechanism would have different concentration ranging from connectivity, education, agriculture, trade and investment, communication, ICT, water, environment, health, tourism, energy, HR, SME, climate change, disaster, culture, cybersecurity, development, poverty, urban development, minorities, financial cooperation, customs, youth, and fisheries. These are very broad surveys of my research, and I try to list out what kind of area of cooperation we are dealing with. So these mechanisms are based on different ideas, political and economic ideologies behind those superpowers' engagement with the sub-region. So the sub-region itself are facing dilemma. We have to think, how could we, the region itself, have to use or make of the existing mechanisms that were supported by different political and economic orders. So with that, it comes back to Thailand. So with that order, Thailand, what can we do? The first thing Thailand has to confront is the order competition, and the second thing is value competition. For the first one, order competition, Thailand and the Mekong region have to think like, how could we position itself in this situation? Are we going to propose, or how are we going to engage in liberal democratic order, and how could we compromise with another alternative order? The second thing is value competition. Thailand has been struggling with how to position itself in this value competition. There are the increasing importance and significance of values in international system. So Thailand hasn't pronounced itself what kind of values are we focusing on. So for Thailand, there are three main questions that we have to answer, in my opinion. The first thing is at the international order. What should Thailand do to manifest its position and interest in this competing international order? And the second thing is at the sub-regional and regional level. How to compromise and accommodate these competing international orders with existing sub and regional initiatives while maintaining national interests. And the third thing is value-based diplomacy. What kind of value Thailand should focus on? So I would say that there are three main things that Thailand can do. First, we can, for the order-based approach, what Thailand could do is try to balance the relations with existing and alternative international order. The second thing is for sub-regional and regional approach. So Thailand should focus on the real interest in the sub-region. So let me go back to this one. As I mentioned earlier, that we are living in the situation where Thailand have to face with many level of mechanisms and initiatives. So for me, myself, I would say that instead of just only focusing on ASEAN centrality, where Thailand can compromise and accommodate itself with other multilateral and minilateral initiatives in the world order, I would say that what Thailand should do is focus on the Mekong sub-region to manifest and show a leading role in this sub-region. So there are two dimensions that we can focus on. The first one is Mekong centrality, the Mekong itself as an international river. And the second thing is ACMEC centrality, so which is a regional initiative. Focusing on these two sub-regions or these two principles would help Thailand to have their leading role in this sub-region to tackle with minilateral and multilateral that are coming to Thailand. Because otherwise, Thailand would not be able to show itself as a leader of the sub-region if we do not have some principles or some ideas or some points that we can start from. So I myself would say that the Mekong as an international river and Mekong's and ACMEC centrality could be something that we can start from, and then we have the interaction with other orders and mechanisms. The second point that I was talking about was ACMEC centrality. And for Thailand, Thailand can also have a leading role in bringing or initiating or maybe propose some other initiative, inviting more people. We have Mekong, Japan, US, China, Australia, blah, blah, blah. But another issue that Thailand hasn't, the Mekong sub-region hasn't touched upon is the role of Russia. We haven't had a Mekong-Russia cooperation. Maybe Thailand can play a leading role as a leading leader in this sub-region to make more open more platforms and negotiation to discuss the role of other actors in this sub-region. Another issue is that in order to balance and to manifest Thailand's roles in this alternative and existing international order, maybe Thailand can play a leading role in bringing a strength of Thailand. In my opinion, I think one of the issues that Thailand have that hasn't exercised well is the educational role in this sub-region. We talk about the soft power of Thailand through culture, food, festivals, theme, books, many things of Thai dimension. But I think one of the strengths of Thailand that we can use is educational strength. We do have AJCCBC or ASEAN Japan cybersecurity capacity building center in Bangkok. We do have many universities and capacity building training hubs in Thailand. So I think this could be something that Thailand can use its academic and educational capacity to manifest and to be a leader in this sub-region. And it will help Thailand to play a more flexible and engaging role in this transforming international order. The third thing is, I think Thailand can play a role in helping or dealing with the emerging values in the international system. Thailand has been trying to play a leading role in many sub-regionalism, minilateralism, and try to engage in many areas of cooperation. However, Thailand hasn't shown, as I mentioned earlier, that Thailand hasn't shown itself or manifest itself what kind of values Thailand try to promote. So I think in order to make Thailand great again, I think what Thailand can do is Thailand can open itself as a regional leader to bring discussion, talks or platforms where we can discuss issues and values at the international level. So this is my first round I want to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Narut. This is the time that I sent him the message, 1 minute left. So he was trying to offer probably optimistic of how minilateral arrangement could offer, especially in the case of Thailand and sub-Mekong region. It served national interest for many countries, especially Thailand. It implies also a compromise, between the pressure between the existing international order led by the West and the alternative order offered by the rising power in the global South, and sub-region can offer Thailand's role in the regions. But I still have the questions, and this is like always the questions when we talk about alternative order, what it actually entails. If it's not a liberal international order, will we see something non-liberal? Would we want to see that? That kind of implications that probably a lot of people questions when rising powers in the global South is trying to offer and convince the global South that we should have the alternative order, but what is alternative order means. So that probably another big questions that we could debate in probably another forum. But let's move on to Thailand case. It's good that Ajahn Narut was touching upon Thailand's case in the Mekong sub-regions. And actually, as I mentioned earlier, Thailand has participated in these minilateral, plurilateral arrangements since the early 1990s. Actually, we can trace back, further as ASEAN is one of them, that Thailand set up during the Cold War. Actually, back in the 1960s, we have seen Thailand initiating, participating, and attempting. Enjoying various minilateral arrangements back in the 90s. We see AFTA, BIMSTEC, GMS, APEC, and et cetera, 2000s, the decades of 2000, we see we initiated ACD, ACMEC, ASEAN-led FTA arrangement with the dialogue partners. Recently, we see, as the question posed earlier, we see Thailand is trying to join OECD and BRICS Plus, right, which kick another round of debate in Thai societies. Which one is actually benefiting Thailand? Which minilateral arrangement that we could actually wisely join, and would not fall into the trap of geopolitics. And especially when we see more intense geopolitical context between rival powers in this region, Asia Pacific. And it's perhaps not only the explanations of the government officials that we're trying to diversify our economic strategies, right? By putting a lot of eggs in a lot of basket, but it entails political implications. And then I would want to to ask our panelists, what do you think about these strategies that we're trying to so-called like diversify? Is it like a hedging, or this hedging is actually going to fall into a trap in geopolitical traps, in these decades? And how should we do? And what's the trend in Thai foreign policy makings? What the MFA and related government agencies should think about it wisely. And please, probably Ajahn Somchai could start with this round. Thank you. How long? Probably 10 minutes we could.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, well, less than 10 minutes.
The foreign policy of Thailand, what we call the plurilateral, multilateral. I will discuss the four grouping that we are. The one we have already part of it, Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. We are one of the 14. The other three, BRICS, we are negotiating. We are applicant. We are negotiating with the 27 countries of the FTA. We are part of the PCA, but we are negotiating for the free trade area. And the third one, that is BRICS. Okay, so I will explain to one. OECD, we also negotiating applicant. Look at this thing. Three factors determining what we call the position in Thailand, but it's geopolitics. We want to be neutral. We feel a little bit over-dependent on China. Look at one thing. China have built Belt and Road Initiative, but it's linked to the sub-regional cooperation. So China have what we call organic relation with Thailand and ASEAN, but USA has no organic. The only one that we are entering, that is Indo-Pacific. Okay. The second element is competition. We are competing with countries of the ASEAN, like Vietnam, and the third one, domestic. These three factors will make us have to decide why we join this forum. The domestic economy will be characterized by what we call declining competitiveness of Thailand. From 2010 until last year, the GDP per capita of Thailand is the number 9. We surpass only Brunei. The average GDP is 2.6, comparing with the ASEAN 4.4. We need to address that kind of problem. Okay. The second one, we need to be neutral in what we call the rivalry of the blocks. That is the second one, and the third one, the competition. So if we look at the first one, OECD. Of course, OECD may be ideological blended, but we enter this because we feel that we don't want to impose. Because OECD have already adopted, for example, the good governance, and also the last one, the minimum corporate tax. We are not part of the negotiation. So what we need is not imposed by what we call fair and complete. We want to enjoy this, not because of the ideological inclination. We want a practical one. We want to be part of that. That is what we call, we need to join OECD. That is very important. The second one, the free trade area. In fact, we have been negotiating with EU, with the PCA long before, but because of the data in 2014, this PCA suspend, FTA suspend until we have the constitution. So the PCA has been adopted and negotiated 2 years ago. But we are still living with the negotiation with the free trade area. Why we need? Look at Vietnam. Vietnam have a free trade area with the 27. How can Thailand compete? Because if you do free trade area, it means that the goods entering the 27 without what we call tariff-free, quota-free. What we enter, we have to pay what we call MFN rate, most favored nation rate. We are not competing with Vietnam. How could we do that? Secondly, Vietnam is part of the CPTPP. CPTPP with 11 countries. We are not part of that. And if we are part of the RCEP, like Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and all the, we are not part of the CPTPP. Vietnam is part of RCEP and also part of CPTPP. We are not competing with the Vietnam because RCEP, CPTPP have what we call higher standard than the RCEP. So what we mean? We can enter, for example, Australia, New Zealand, and also Japan with quota free because we have a lot of free trade. But we couldn't compete because they need what we call nature treatment. Australia, New Zealand, and Japan have what we call adopt higher standard of CPTPP. In this regard, how could we? So we need to do something. Enter, for example, free trade area with the 27 countries of the EU in order to catch up what we all will be lacking. But unfortunately, we are not yet applying for the CPTP. That will be the problem for us in the future. And the third one, I will leave the BRIC finally. The third one, that is the Indo-Pacific. We want to show that we are not dependent on China, because China, has BRI. BRI is linked with what we call the macro sub-regional cooperation. Look at the southern belt of China and the maritime belt linked with the southern corridor of Thailand and the other country. So we need to show America that, hey, we are maintaining neutrality. That is why we are part of the 14 countries of the Indo-Pacific. But unfortunately, Indo-Pacific could not touch the integration. So there is not what we call free trade. This is just something, just a certain cooperation in a certain number, like supply chain, but it shows that we are neutral to be part of that. And lastly, that is very important, why we apply for BRICS. Because BRICS will be what we call the voice of the global south. Okay, but BRICS is also characterized what we call a blended. Blended when we enter the BRICS, it means that you are going to be part what we call against USA, because of this country want to counterweight to America and also the G7. Look at what happened. The new coming, we talk about the 5 countries. In fact, 6 countries joined later on last year. United Arab Emirates, Ethiopia, Egypt, and Iran. 2 countries, Argentina, withdraw. What about Saudi Arabia? As I heard, it's not officially part of that enjoy, because Saudi Arabia think that joining this one, what about America? So that is very important. Thailand, you want to show that you are neutral. You are joining, for example, on one part, you have Indo-Pacific, but on the other part, you join a BRIC blended with one part of the other part. And the second one is what we call the voice of the global south. In this fact, are you really neutral? In this sense, you are joining. Yes, we have already been 2 of them, but let's say Saudi Arabia is a case of study. Why Saudi Arabia is reluctant to join in that? Because they think that by joining that, it means that your brand is already there. And lastly, if you look at the thing, America has adopted so-called friend shoring. That is very important. As I heard, Vietnam is part of the friend. In India is part of friend. I doubt whether Thailand has been considered to be friend shoring. Yes, we are neutral. One way we are part of the BRICS. The other way we are part of America. But really, if you are part of BRICS, BRICS is already a blended ideology against what we call the America, against the G7. Because in fact, not against OECD, because I look at OECD is more not what we call ideological inclination, more of the technical one. But unfortunately, it's already been grouped by 38 countries within the same ideology, but it's more technical one. So my conclusion is that we will see this Thailand will be successful or not. We are neutral in this what we call the rivalry block. But of course, each one that we enter have some reason. One is catching up, competition with Vietnam, and the third one try to show the neutral. But of course, some of them will be successful in catching up. showing that we are not part of that is very difficult, because when we do something in politics, it doesn't matter what it is, but how it is perceived. That is the question of perception of the two blocks. Thank you.
Thank you ครับอาจารย์สุชัยอาจารย์ที่นั่น
Okay, I mean, I don't want to take more than just 5 minutes because I want to make sure we have time for the audience. I prepared a lot of points. I just say in a provocative way as well that Thailand has fallen behind. I'll just build on what Ajahn Somchai said about, use the word catch up. This is another kind of catch up. This is a catch up from falling behind, not a catch up from being a non-participant, or when you begin a new game, you join a new race, you can have to catch up. But Thailand has been in a kind of a game and a race, but it just has fallen behind. And Ajahn Somchai mentioned Vietnam as a friend shore, and you can also say Mexico as a near shore. Thailand has lost out, and the reason it has lost out is because of the domestic political volatility. The 2 military coups in 2006, 2014 have done deep damage to Thai foreign policy, Thai economic interest. It's just unbelievable. And I think that the powers that be, the people that are in charge, they don't seem to care. So that's just to put it bluntly. So Thai foreign policy, what should it be? The last time Thailand had a kind of a foreign policy projection strategy that people took notice of was about 20 years ago. Thai foreign policy is famous, right? Over the years, over the decades, over the centuries, for being able to balance the great powers, being able to survive imperialism, Western colonization. I mean, how could it be that this little country over here, not little, it's a sizable country in the middle of Southeast Asia, colonies on both sides, up and down. And then it went through World War I, World War II, Cold War. This is a world-famous diplomacy, but it's lost its way. So I think I would characterize the new government, and we have new government and now new government under Kun Patong Tan Shinawat, a graduate from here, in fact. Sethao was a new government, now a new government, and I would characterize them as what Foreign Minister Marit said the other day about non-alignment. It is not possible for Thailand to have a non-alignment foreign policy. Thailand is aligned. Thailand is a U.S. treaty ally. Thailand is very close to China, has good relations with all the major powers, with non-alignment. Non-alignment from the Bandung we attended, and I think that no country now wants to do non-alignment. It's multi-alignment in a multipolar kind of world. So I characterize our current foreign policy and the new government after General Prayut, thankfully, and Foreign Minister Don, deep damage to Thai foreign policy, by the way, those people. It's a rudderless omnidirectionality, which means it wants to go in different directions. It wants to engage with China, it wants to engage with the US, it wants to join the BRICS, it wants to join the OECD, it's in IPEF, and IPEF, by the way, is uncertain what will happen to IPEF if Trump wins. Omnidirectional, it wants to go in different directions, which is good. And you can flip it as a kind of a multi-alignment, moving multi-alignment, which I think is a good direction. But there's no rudder, there's no steering, there's no vision, there's no strategy. When you have a foreign minister who's an acolyte or an assistant of Kun Thaksin Shinawat, who's like the manager of the coalition and the founder of the Pheu Thai party, you cannot have an autonomous foreign policy. The last time we had a foreign minister who had some autonomy, some vision, and you also have to have some international prestige, international acceptance. You can't just have any, you go abroad, you have to be somebody that people know and trust and familiar with. The last time we had someone like that was Surin Pisuwan Sukumpan Baripat. We have foreign minister here, a former foreign minister, His Excellency Kasit Pirom is in the room. And I think he also is well known as a professional diplomat. When you go abroad, you engage, you're not a new face. But professional diplomat is one thing. You also need autonomy. As a foreign minister, you cannot be like a function, an assistant of the, someone else. So I think, to be fair, I think when Foreign Minister Kasit was in the office, he had the autonomy. He was regarded as one, person of his own undertakings. And Surin Pissawan certainly is Ajahn Sukumpant in a different role, but you need that for foreign policy formulation, implementation, diplomacy. You have professional diplomat, yes, they need to be autonomous. This is a time when you have to have some international recognition, familiarity. When Surin Pissawan was foreign minister, Chon Lik Pai was a prime minister. Chon Lik Pai would never intervene. He had no idea, he couldn't. He was beyond him. Surin Pissawan would just tell Chon Lik Pai what the world was about. And now we have a situation the other way. Kun Thaksin will tell Kun Marit about what the world is about. And that's not good for Thai foreign policy making going forward, to be honest. So we need professionalism, yes. Professional diplomat, yes. We need autonomy, international recognition. Domestic constraints have been deeply damaging, and I think until we sort this out, Thai foreign policy direction will be murky, will be kind of half-baked, no clear direction. They want to go in all directions, but no rudder. And to have that rudder, we saw it 20 years ago. I have to say, Thaksin's regime at that time, I was a big critic, but they had a game plan for Thailand. They, to start for foreign policy direction strategy. You can play along. There are rules of the game. There are, already all these bodies, the SCO, the, Eurasian Economic Union. You have all the BRICS, OECD, and so on and so on. Thailand, 20 years ago, Thailand had a vision or had a kind of a mindset to come up with the Asia Cooperation Dialogue, ACMEX, bilateral FTAs. Those three pillars were Thailand foreign policy strategy and directions. ACMEX was really pivoting, leveraging Southeast Asia, mainland Southeast Asia, as a pivot of the Asian landmass. Asia Cooperation Dialogue, which they're trying to revive now. ACMEX was about mainland Southeast Asia around the Mekong region. And then the bilateral FTAs with the US, with Latin America, with Middle East, it was like gateways to these other regions. And that was the last time Thailand had a foreign policy game plan. Since then, the two coups, what happens when you have a coup? You spend all your time trying to explain to the world why there was a coup. The first year, under General Prayut. And the second year, you have to explain to the world why, when there would be an election, when there would be a constitution. I'll just be last minute. I don't want to go on about this. So, it's a great topic we have. And I think we all want to see Thailand move forward in the world. Thailand's international standing is at its lowest. Ajahn Somchai mentioned already about the trend growth. ASEAN 4.4, Thailand 2.6. Where is that going to go? So I think until we really unlock and unleash this, we have a lot of talent, a lot of resources, and a great credibility, reputation, accumulated over centuries, but it's been kept down by the domestic shenanigans. And until we sort this out, I think the foreign policy direction will be limited. I don't think we should go into the BRICS plus. It's not just BRICS anymore. You got Iran and Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Ethiopia. That's not the kind of club that we want to get into. OECD, Indonesia and Malaysia will, and I think if we get into the BRICS, we can show up for the meetings, but be very careful about the direction where it's going. It will be used by Russia, it will be used by China for its own gains. For South-South cooperation, the Global South, there are other gateways, there are other channels that we can play a role. But I think the government here, they don't have a lot of deliverables, they don't have a lot of achievements. So they want to join what they can, and BRICS is an easy, very low bar. OECD is the one Thailand needs to join. The EU-Thai FTA negotiations is actually all the reforms that Thailand needs to implement, formulate and implement. EFTA, similar. And even EFTA, much smaller, is problematic just because of the domestic vested interest now is so entrenched over the last 10 years of post-coup in 2014. So I think OECD is the way ahead, BRICS not, IPEF not certain, CPTPP, the train left and we missed it. RCEP is not a gold standard trade liberalization, but yes, Thailand is in there. I'm not sure how effective it will be. But so I think that moving forward, the bilateral FTAs with the EU is a priority. OECD is priority. BRICS, if we have to, be very careful about. Thank you.
Thank you, Jatinan. I kind of feel your frustrations with Thai foreign policies and this decision recently to join BRICS and without any clear strategy. But let's hear from what Ajahn Natanan could offer.
Okay, another pressure is that I have around 30 minutes in my script, but I can make it. Keep calm and move on. Okay. As mentioned in the first round that especially the EU, that the global trade liberalization is frozen under the WTO, and then the region to region is not quite successful, as I mentioned. Now the EU moved to region to state, right, through the PCA means and FTA means, and it could feedback like a spaghetti bowl that Ajahn Paul just said that it could feedback, this region to state could feedback to be region to region achievement in the future. I left one point that how the EU map FTA is mirroring the US. The EU always mirror the US. For example, when the US approached NAFTA, Mexico and Canada, the EU also go several years later to Mexico and Canada. And when the US go to South America, it started with Colombia and Peru. The EU also approached Colombia and Peru. And also in East Asia with South Korea, the EU also approached South Korea. And ASEAN is the same pattern, US Singapore, US Vietnam, US Malaysia. The EU also negotiate FTA with Singapore, Vietnam, and Malaysia. So you see the pattern that the EU mirrored the US in these negotiations. For the Thai proactive economic diplomacy, I think Ajahn Tinan did mention already, but we've seen that Pheu Thai leaders, both Setha and Kun Pathongthan, frame this concept since before the election result. Is that main taxonomic campaigns with the mixture of marketing campaigns and populism. And this proactive economic diplomacy was derived from, the first one is Thailand's economic regression, maybe since COVID-19 pandemic, household debt, and our economic crisis, global economic crisis. So, and also the second factor is the political legitimacy of the Pheu Thai vis-a-vis the Move Forward Party of Kun Pitha when they become the cabinet setting and coalition setting. And you say that the campaign, they frame themselves as Thailand will be the commercial state, right? It's very, very clear. And Thailand will be friend to all, enemy to none, right? So you see how Pheu Thai, Setha, Pathongthan try to, Ajahn Tinan used the word omnidirectional, but I try to say that it's more like an omnidistance to all major powers, especially in the Russia-Ukraine war. They're not meddling with Russia, not side with Ukraine, right? So, and also on September 13, when the new prime minister declared her statement, she said that Thailand's stand won't be part of international conflicts and continue Setha's proactive economic diplomacy. So I believe that this EU FTA this negotiation will be sped up a lot, and challenges still remain, as ISIS did arrange a previous forum about how the standards need to be upgraded and how we're going to have negative stakeholders impact from intellectual property rights, ILO regulations that Vietnamese did face before in the EU-Vietnamese FTA. So there will be new law enactment and the remedy mechanisms for operators that negatively affected from FTA. Well, about hedging, I think the Thai-EU relations, this minilateralism, helped Thailand for hedging strategy vis-a-vis major powers, as Ajahn Porn posed question. And also, EU also can de-risk from over-reliance on China and Russia. And I think this minilateralism will not weaken ASEAN work or ASEAN centrality because ASEAN didn't do much on trade. ASEAN was more on political and peace talk in the region, especially in the ARF. My final point would be some thoughts on BRICS because, well, the thing is, BRICS is the third generation of regionalism, in which the first one is economic regionalism, as you know, and then the second one is, the second gen is the mixed with economy and politics, and the third one is the attempt to shaping global governance, like Ajahn Somchai say, to be anti-US, anti-Bretton Woods institution, try to reform the IMF and World Bank, the voting or the special drawing rights when they vote, because there were critics that in the IMF and the World Bank, it is $1 one vote, something like that, and it's not good for the global south in the international monetary system. But the thing is, it sounds nice when you say that, oh, these BRICS, these 5 countries try to be like leaders of the global south. But actually, it's very leapfrogging because people thought that they are like a pivotal middle power, that China will act on behalf of East Asia, Russia will act on behalf of Caucasus, or Brazil will act on behalf of Latin America. But are they actually doing that, right? You see, they were so like, they pursue their own gains. And there were so many differences among them. India always pursue the trade protectionism, economic nationalism, while Brazil tried to open the trade. Russia used BRICS as the narratives of the North-South conflict. And China have a border dispute with India on Tibet. Egypt, Ethiopia on the Nile, and Saudi and Iran on religious segment. So I think this kind of forming of BRICS is very, how to say, it's not really have like share value except anti the Western financial arrangement, monetary arrangements, and well, and Ajahn Tina did say that it's not a wise idea to join BRICS, but it is understandable why the Thai government, the current Thai government, wanted to join BRICS because in their heads, they are just like a salesman. They want to sell wherever they can. So BRICS is going to be the vast market, like 30% of the market of the world will be in BRICS. So I would leave that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Ajahn Narut just signaled to me that he already mentioned about Thailand's case. So we probably can jump into Q&A. If anyone wants to join the discussions and or ask questions to our panelists, please raise your hand, introduce yourself. And first one always. Thank you, Foreign Minister Kasit. Please come.
Kasit Pirom, fellow at ISIS. One observation. I think the whole idea about Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and particularly about BRICS, is the attempt and the wishes of China and Russia to lead the pack to challenge the United States and G7. And the United States is not going to give up its primacy. And I am more or less in support of John Meschelmayer, the intellectual professors of the United States and so on, that the United States would not allow any peer competitor anywhere in the world. And since Thailand is a treaty alliance of the United States, then why the hell the Thai government is pursuing the road towards BRICS and so on? It doesn't make sense at all. And BRICS doesn't offer any of the economic goodies and so on because the economic pattern, international trade pattern of Thailand is quite widespread, not dependent on Russia or China in particular, and so on. Second, on the OECD, it's a club of developed industrialized countries, and to apply or to think that Thailand should join OECD, well, good intention, but we have to go all over the whole gamut of Thai legislation, laws, and so on, which are not of international standard and so on. So Thailand needs to do drastic legal reform of the whole country pertaining to economic activities. It's not going to be an easy meet. And I think the decision to join OECD came off the cup. It looks good. It makes the government look so smart to talk about OECD without any adequate preparation at all. And at the moment, nothing has been done much to review the industrial setup, the legal setup of Thailand to prepare itself for eventual membership in OECD. I don't place much hope and enthusiasm on that one. But my question to all the panelists is that could we, I think Thailand, come back and review ASEAN community? We have ASEAN in our hand. We have the principle of centrality. So why running all around the world and so on to do this and that? Why not come back to ASEAN and utilize the ASEAN community to, I think, not only to pursue Thailand interests, but the 10 member states altogether. And maybe ASEAN could also play the leading role as the leaders of the global South without having to rely on India, Brazil, or China, and so on, but could work with them in order to position the global South as a very viable entity. And what do you think, panelist, professor? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Khun Kasit. It's very good questions. Any one of you want to answer this question? The second question, probably we can collect some questions. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Dr. Paul. Maybe I'll address my question to you and you can share with the panel as you see fit. Thank you very much for this opportunity to hear from you all in one place on one morning. Very elaborate discussion, and it's much appreciated. As the former foreign minister has pointed out, the road to OEC membership has just begun, and it's a long road requiring a lot of domestic regulatory reform. BRICS seems that Russia, in its chairship this year, is pushing pause on new membership. In light of those two, just would welcome comments on, it's been linked to sort of if there are early wins in foreign policy for this Thai administration. Neither of those seems to be the pathway to an early membership, an early win. So how does the government, when that doesn't be realized, pivot to some other method to demonstrate some foreign policy prowess besides investment attraction and some of the other elements that have been discussed with a proactive economic diplomacy approach. So that question, how does it pivot, or if these wins aren't realized early, what is next? And then just to return to Dr. Nurut's question around what are Thai foreign policy values at the moment. And Dr. Thitinan has mentioned that Kundan had his ways of managing Thai foreign policy over a number of years. One of the things he was a champion for in the region was attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals. So again, it seems to be really focused on economics. What is Foreign Minister Marit's pathway to a values-based diplomacy? What will he, or what could he stand for Thailand? Thank you.
Thank you. Any of you want to answer these questions first? First, the focus on the ASEAN centralities is that should be the pathway to Thai foreign policy.
Yeah, very good question and observation. So from Tan Tutkasit, I think the OECD point about the requirement of legal reforms is spot on. And so in fact, is ambition without any preparation, I think it's just a kind of a reaching for the stars without knowing where you stand. So a very good point. But I think that since they brought it up, since it's been broached, it's something that we should promote in terms of the domestic dialogues about how we can better prepare or approach trying to enter the OECD. Indonesia is very serious about it. I think they'll make headway. And this relates to the question about the ASEAN centrality. Why not make more out of ASEAN instead of all these BRICS and Plus and OECD and all of that as a kind of the linchpin, the platform for Global South for Thailand and South-South. Well, the answer, Thantut, if you look at Indonesia sees itself beyond ASEAN. And ASEAN is underperforming, underwhelming, and not delivering. On Myanmar itself, there's a civil war in Myanmar, deadly. The 5-point consensus is still a working document for ASEAN, but it's not making much progress. And nothing in the ASEAN has been doing is consequential in Myanmar. And then I already mentioned all the other divisions around ASEAN that ASEAN has to grapple with. And now you can see this, the rise of minilaterals is a frustration with ASEAN. ASEAN is not performing its job as a central player, as a kind of the entity to promote and secure peace and prosperity in the region. So the other countries, from AUKUS to Quad, New Quad, and so on, they go other ways. Indonesia is the biggest country, biggest ASEAN member state, sees ASEAN as a first tier, but I think it's frustrated with ASEAN. It sees its role in the G20, that's the way ahead. Its role in the OIC, the Organization for Islamic Cooperation. It will join the BRICS, I think, and then it will apply to OECD. So I think for ASEAN, Indonesia will not be held back by ASEAN inertia and dysfunctionality. And for that reason, ASEAN faces some really internal challenges. Malaysia, as chair of ASEAN next year, will make the most of it. And I think we can expect that the Anwar Ibrahim government, they would also try to use the ASEAN chairmanship ahead of the elections at home to convert international dividends into domestic constituencies. But then, you look around, ASEAN cannot unite. Philippines has a big confrontation now with China, second Thomas Show, and ASEAN has not had a singular uniform position to support Philippines. Go the other way, the Philippines and Vietnam, Philippines has not been that supportive of Mekong cooperation, for example, vis-a-vis China upstream dams. So, it would be ideal that ASEAN is Thailand's main basket of currencies to deal with the world, the outside world, but it's not becoming one for Indonesia, for the Philippines, even for Malaysia, I think. ASEAN will not break up, but the value that it has had for member states, I think, has gone down. And other countries, member states will go different ways as this happens further. The question about, I'm sorry, where are you from? Normally we ask our questioners, participants to say where they're from.
Of course, no apologies. I'm from the Embassy of Canada. Thank you.
Okay. And you were talking about the BRICS on the one hand and early wins, the other one was OECD. I think this government is, sometimes I liken it to a BlackBerry to an iPhone 16. So they're trying to revive the ACD, ACMEX. The talk is very much old talk. This was a 2 decades ago talk that Thailand was really on top of its game 2 decades ago. And now they come in, they still, they look at the advisors, look at the people. These people are from the 20 years, 30 years ago. So what we needed to hear was not the Thaksin speech on August 22nd, was a Bita speech for the 2030s. And I think if you look at the Move Forward Party platform and what they propose about industrial policy and decentralization, liberalization, that's where Thailand needs to go. In the absence of that, OECD criteria, also something that Thailand can work, can think about how to operationalize, how to move towards. So BRICS, I think they're trying to join because it's a very low bar, I mentioned, something to show domestic consumption, for domestic consumption. OECD, as Tantu Siasit mentioned, to make it realistic, not just a pie in the sky, but a realistic approach. They need to start thinking about what's required. And I think that's really the road for us.
Thank you very much, Ajahn. We have tried to implement some reform under OECD for quite some time. I was involved in one of the projects 5 years ago before COVID about joining OECD like 5 years ago. So it means like we were trying very hard to adjust and reform, but I don't think the road to the membership, the full membership, would be realistic, in the next 5 years or even 10 years, and probably what Ajahn Thitinan was mentioning, perhaps it cannot cater to domestic politics. They have to deliver some of the policies for the next, elections in the next 3 years. That we do something with foreign policy initiative. And this like BRICS low bar, and they're probably very easy to get in, and perhaps that's the main implications of this decision making. Any other questions?
If there are no other participants saying anything, but let me say two things might be useful to you. I attended the ACD meetings and so on, and I think the original idea of Kun Thaksin was to have the connectivity between the whole of Asia, from the West Asia to the East Asia. But it did not move much for the past decade or two because of the problem with Pakistan and India. We cannot link the connectivity on transportation and roads and so on, or to renew the Asia Highway because of the ongoing conflict between the two countries. And if ACD were to be any meaningful, it would have to do something about peacemaking between Pakistan and India. Second, Dr. Thitinan and I think the older members here in this room, we have been living through many coup d'etats in Thailand and so on. But whatever was happening at the political level, but we bureaucrats, even academics, throughout the 30, 40 years period, continue to function as bureaucrats. And what has been missing lately, the past 10, 15 years, is that in spite of the political upheavals, the bureaucrats, especially the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, National Security Council, and so on, and even the Civil Service Commission have not been working to the best of their ability. We can do a hell of a lot of work as bureaucrats to prepare Thailand to move forward, but that has not been the case. And hopefully in this room, some of my younger colleagues from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs will take up the initiative, organize more consultation and meetings and inform the public what we are doing, what are we to do, and so on. Don't wait for the direction to be forthcoming from the Prime Minister or from the Foreign Minister. It would not come. It's up to you to take the initiative. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Actually, when Kun Kassit was mentioning about ACD, right? I mean, like, I remember when I was, actually back then I was working with the National Security Council in 2001, 2006, and then Thaksin administrations quoted China a lot, right? I mean, like, back then probably China still like kind of shy from, exercising international leadership to this extent, right? So probably could give the room for Thaksin to kind of initiated OECD, no, OECD, ACD. But now I don't think we have that backup anymore, right? And it kind of like failed, and then during the 20 years of a political crisis in Thailand. So perhaps this like outdated mind in the policy making circle in Thailand probably could not be relevant. We were waiting for the young generations in our bureaucracies to push forward to a new direction and strategies. Dr. Narup, you want to talk about anything? Value? Ajahn Somchai, Stephanie. So any questions from the floor? Our Indonesian audience, if you want to share about your positions on OECD.
Thank you. It's very, very interesting speech about Indonesia and especially about ASEAN. It's very, I'm quite little bit shocked about the decline of ASEAN and how you perceive that Indonesia see beyond ASEAN. I do still think that how can we collaborate more in ASEAN perspective, because I do know that every country has their personal interest, there's countries' interest, and the domestic politics also influence their decision to maximize their interest. That's why I see that minilateralism also blooming in every region, not only in Southeast ASEAN. The question actually, how, for example, from the perspective of Thailand and also from the perspective of Indonesia, can we maximize ASEAN as a platform to build collaboration between ASEAN countries? And what the reform we need? Because, for example, the consensus in ASEAN that every member have to agree on something that it will become like a decision in ASEAN actually hinder the ASEAN countries to maximize the policy in ASEAN. That's actually what we need to do together to build the strong collaboration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any response from our panelists? Probably that's a very core of ASEAN weakness, right?
I'll be very quick. Are you from the Ministry of?
I'm from the Ministry of Law and Human Rights of Indonesia.
Thank you. There's an ASEAN minus X formula that's well known, and I've written and talked a lot about how ASEAN can be revamped, but this will have to impinge on the non-interference and all their norms. But the ASEAN 5, the original 5, plus X, that's how ASEAN can move forward. I think Indonesia, when President Prabowo comes in, they're thinking about it, their team, which means that it doesn't have to be all 10. If you wait for ASEAN 10 AMS, there's no progress. So, but ASEAN original 5 on Myanmar, on US-China, on Russia-Ukraine, they're aligned. Plus X could be Vietnam. It depends on what the issues are.
Thank you very much. We probably have ASEAN 11 soon, right, with East Timor. Anyway, if you don't have any questions, thank you again for joining us. And please follow us, the Facebook page or Twitters for the next coming, seminar. And thank you for today, and have a good journey back.